Hi, it's Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter, and welcome to another episode of Career Coach Office Hours. Woohoo! Last week on Friday, there was a technical issue, so I wasn't streaming to LinkedIn. If you had a question for me, I apologize. I wasn't able to deal with it, but we should be back normal today. So if you've got a question for me about job search, hiring more effectively, management, leadership, dealing with some workplace problem you have, put it in the chat. I'll try and deal with it today. And if you have a question that comes up later on, you can email it to me at thebiggamehunter@gmail.com. I just ask in the subject line, put the phrase office hours. So this way I can organize the questions, respond to them in advance, but then use it as a subject for a later show. So if you're on LinkedIn, let me know that you're here. If you're on the other platforms, let me know that you're here because I also stream to LinkedIn, Facebook Live, YouTube concurrently. And it's nice to know when people are online. So again, if you're on LinkedIn in particular, it just lets me know that the streaming is working properly, and I'd really appreciate it. Now, with that, I've got a number of questions here that were sent to me. Some involve job search, some of them involve hiring or management. But the first one is a fun question. How can recruiters trust job candidates' resumes now that it's become common practice for some, but not all people, to exaggerate their accomplishments? You know, I worked in search for a long time, like 40 years. And one thing you'll learn pretty quickly is that everyone lies. Job hunters are posturing for advantage. They want to get an interview. They want to get hired. They, shall we say, embellish the truth. It also took me a while to figure out institutional customers are doing that too. And I'm not going to go into details now. Obviously, many of you think recruiters do as well. So the result is no one trusts anyone. If they did, all you'd have to do is apply for a job and you get hired because they could trust what was there. Instead, the process involves interviews that are designed to ascertain whether what you claim to know is what, in fact, you do know. So this is no different than it's existed at any point in human history. So don't make it seem like this is a brand new occurrence. This has been going on for time immemorial, whatever the word is. I'll simply say no one trusts anyone in the hiring process, nor should they. You need to confirm that what it is someone claims to know is something that they do know. And no one's completely forthright. So let me go on to the next question, which kind of builds on this one, but from the employer side. What are some interesting questions to ask in an interview? Now, I'll simply say the process of hiring has become mechanical. You could go online and find any number of questions that you can research and prepare for. And I've got a book out called The Right Answers to Tough Interview Questions that can get you prepared for a lot of the questions that come online. But from the employer perspective, they ask the same stuff over and over again. And, part of your job as a job hunter is to entertain. However, from the employer perspective, you have to glean information to determine whether or not this person is qualified. So I always encourage people, come up with a series of standardized questions in advance of the interview that allow you to determine qualifications. Make sure they fit the job description and are not just some whimsical nonsense that happened to pop into your mind. It's designed to ascertain whether someone is qualified to do the job. But from there, you have to try and get to the human being. So there are 4 questions I talk about that are designed to get people off the script. And this is the one I would ask even before the qualifying questions. What's most important to you in the next job or organization? What will you need to see or hear to believe it's a good choice? That's question number one before any sort of question about their skills or competency. And thus, I believe you ask it instead of tell me about yourself. And the reason you do it is if you can't give them what they want, why would you waste your time and theirs if you can't provide it for them? This is the simplest screening question on the planet. The second question is, why do you do what you do? Which is a question that can be asked later on. So, yes, you can start doing the screening questions, but then from there, you switch gears to try and get to the human being. Why do you do what you do? Is designed to have them tell you about what it is that keeps them interested in the work. How do they decide to work in this profession and attain this level of success? So, for example, they might say, I started off as a software engineer in school, now manage a team of engineers. I became a manager because, and then this question is going to take them off the script and have them start to open up to you. The third question is, what did you want to be when you were growing up? Now, this one fries people's circuits because it's going to teach you about their childhood dreams and give you an opportunity to hear their passion completely unfiltered. I want to be a pitcher for the Yankees. I dreamed of being a ballet dancer or ballerina. Look for the excitement and their embarrassment because that's human. And then from there, it's how did you get from there, wanting to be the pitcher or the ballerina or ballet dancer, to here? And it's not about judging the answer. It's just trying to get a sense of their thought process, their humanity, stuff along those lines. Because ultimately, you're going to have to live with these people. And if you treat them like machines, like a machine, eventually they're going to break. And what often breaks first is their spirit, desire, and passion. Because once you can identify and foster the qualities in your people, you can help to keep them engaged and inspired for as long as possible and help them instead of treat them like they're disposable. Follow? So I do believe that there's a lot that you can get from these kinds of questions that takes people off the script and gets them to a human place that is far different. Again, if you've got a question for me, put it into chat. I'd love to respond to it. And in the future, if you have a question between episodes, you can email it to me at thebiggamehunter@gmail.com. And in the subject line, put the phrase office hours, and this way I'll respond to it. Next question. Does it raise suspicion during a job interview if you ask their policy on trading shifts? My son works in restaurants, and he's waiting tables. He's culinary trained, and it's a common practice to trade shifts. From an employer's perspective, they worry. They worry because what are we hiring here? It gives them reason to not feel suspicious, but it gives them the idea that you may not always be available, and thus they're going to have to help backfill slots during the interview process. So I would wait until I receive the offer before raising this as a subject. If you work in a factory environment, again, same thing shows up. So don't rush out to ask this question. It puts not suspicion, but it gets them to worry. Okay? What are some of the best responses to sell me this pen or pencil in a job interview? Most people who are asked this question are relatively inexperienced. When you're experienced, excuse me for 1 second, when you're experienced, they're not going to ask this question. But for rookies, for people in sales, this is a pretty typical question. So the best way to answer it is by asking questions. So you start off with pen, pencil, let's say pen. What are you going to use the pen for? Like, are there particular qualities about the pen? Do you have a price point that you're looking at? You're asking questions so that in this way you can give them what they want. And thus you can say, we carry a lot of pens, but I want to make sure we have one that meets your needs, is at the right price point. And thus, let me just ask a few questions to understand what you want from a pen. Do you have a preference as to a color ink? Do you want to create an impression when you do something in front of a client? What are you going to use the pen for? And notice what I'm doing. I'm doing requirements gathering. And then from there, you can say, I've got a pen for you. Let me just show it to you because it meets all your needs. And have an excited look on your face as you tantalize them with that statement and get them excited and wagging their tail about this. So that's the way I would answer the sell me this pen or pencil question. Next one is, can people legally look for a new job while on a leave of absence from another job? Of course you can do that. Now, if you're in a country where there's some law against this, obviously you follow that law. But of course you can look for a job while on a leave of absence from your current job. Why couldn't you? And certainly, although we currently have a government that is looking for every opportunity to legislate every situation, I don't think this is one that they've covered yet. So you should be pretty free and clear and thus be able to look for a job while on a leave. This next question is great. I love this one when it came in. How do you improve an employee's commitment? Okay, so here's what you do. You look in the mirror and say, I hired the wrong person. What in my interview process causes me to select people who are disengaged from the work? Now I pause for a second and I say, if they were engaged when they got there and now are disengaged, there are two possibilities. Number one is something in their personal life is getting in the way, or number two, something you've done or that is going on at work is causing them to become disengaged. No matter which of these latter two options there are, what you need to do is to have a conversation with the employee and say, is everything okay? Because I noticed you've been off your game for a couple of weeks now. And I just want to make sure that there was nothing in your personal life or nothing I'd done that caused you to become turned off to the work. And by this, what you're able to do is draw them in. If they say, no, nothing at all, then you made a mistake. And the mistake you made was not qualifying completely enough to determine whether someone would be an engaged employee and fit into your culture. Now, I've been talking with someone recently in the UK who administers a test called Lumina, Lumina. It seems to be a terrific test that a hiring manager can administer to an employee that measures people in a variety of different ways. And once you take the test, your people take the test, and a potential hire takes the test, you can determine whether or not you want an identical fit or you want someone who would complement the existing team. And I think it's an interesting approach. Again, Lumina, take a look at this test, mention my name, Jeff Altman, and Stuart or one of the people on his team, I'm sure will treat you very well. So the idea is you may not be doing a good enough job evaluating and assessing people for your organization. Or a person has a personal problem, or you've done something to turn them off. Whichever it is, you need to have a conversation with them so that in this way it doesn't go on forever and undermine your leadership in the firm. Okay, what do you look for when building a team? Um, I think it's really the same answer. So I'm going to skip this question. And will having a Yahoo email address damage your chances of employment? They have other things to worry about than your Yahoo email address. You may get a chuckle from them. You may get a mocking remark in the office about a Yahoo or AOL address, but it really doesn't matter. If you're qualified, you're going to get hired. If you're not qualified, you're not. So don't worry about your email address. Focus on delivering the goods on the interview, learning how to interview like an all-star so that in this way they want to hire you instead of focusing on your email address. It's the most trivial point you can imagine. What job interview questions are applicants often too nervous to ask that would actually be helpful both to them and to the interviewer? I thought this was an interesting question because I think of the questions I coach people to ask. And there's one, most people make the mistake of asking about the job at the end of the interview. And that's really too late to do anything with that information. So I coach people to ask about it at the beginning. So the questions I encourage people to ask at the end are, first of all, let's say you hire me and I come on board. What would your expectations of me be for the first 30, 60, 90 days? Then from there, after listening to that answer, let's say it's a year from now and I've done a great job. What will I have accomplished during that year that will make you think that way? What follows is a question that I think is terrific and may actually fit the model for the answering this one. And that is, tell me about next steps in the process. When might I hear about them? And thus, what you're able to do from their answer. And again, people are too nervous to ask this question because they're afraid of hearing something they don't want to hear. You'll know the truth about what they think about you. If they say, we expect to, we've got 27 more people to talk to, we'll be in touch with you when hell freezes over. Or in a few weeks when we're done, if we're interested, then you've heard something that you may not like to hear, but it's useful to you. And it's useful to them because it lets, they don't have to worry about you following up all that much. If they say to you, I expect the early part of next week, you can follow up by saying, so if I haven't heard from you by Thursday or Friday, is it okay if I message you and find out where you stand? Again, people are too nervous to ask that question, and employers benefit from this because it allows them to respond by saying, sure, no problem, or wait, sit tight, we'll be in touch when we're ready to be in touch. Or they can say, early part of next week, I expect we'll be in touch with you to schedule you back for another interview. You'll be meeting with so-and-so, and the more specific they are, the more they're communicating with you that they're interested. Job hunters are often too nervous to ask that kind of question because they're afraid of what they're going to hear. Employers don't mind answering it because what they're able to do is to communicate their interest or lack thereof so that they're not being bombarded with hey, just following up. Want to see what you thought about me. Any feedback from the interview. And, fundamentally, they're not really interested. So they can kind of cue you into that, with the conversation. So, what is so bad about a career break that employers are wary of hiring somebody with one? Is it rational to reject the candidate just because she or he has a gap in his or her resume? Two different questions, although the person doesn't recognize them. So I'm going to take the second one first. Rejecting a candidate because they have a gap in their resume. And the answer is it depends on why they have the gap. There are economic circumstances that cause gaps. You know, firms aren't hiring. We called that the pandemic in 2020. So intrinsically, there's nothing bad about a gap. But a career break makes it complicated because their impression of you is you're not work committed. You're more interested in playing and traveling or doing what you're doing than in doing the work. Now, if you were taking care of a sick parent, I would include that in the resume. You know, uh, you know, resign my position to care for my mom or dad or whomever it was, uh, my husband, my wife, during a stage in their life where they were terminally ill. People will understand that one. And they want to make sure you're not rusty. So you have to demonstrate relevant skills once you get to the interview phase and present the information in a way that lets them want to trust you. Again, without trust, they worry about whether or not they're hiring a problem person who's lied to them, who actually wasn't at home taking care of an ill person. They think of you as being a goof off, a screw up, something else that causes them to question you. What might be the reason for a job being reposted after an interview went well? There are a lot of reasons why this could have happened. Um, Maybe from the employer standpoint, they ran an ad and a job board offered them the ability to auto repost it for an additional 30 days without any effort on their part. You know, a lot of sites offer that, and that may be the case for this firm. Another reason is that until someone starts the job, the position's still open. And just because you got past the first interview or the second or the third doesn't mean that you'll get past the next group of interviewers. So they want to keep interviewing until the thing is closed. You also want to make sure that employers sometimes are ghosted. So until someone's on board for a little while, they don't think the job is filled. So they've gotten too many calls where they say, I've accepted a counter offer, or the sentence that begins with, I've been thinking about it. And so until someone walks in the door and performs for a week or two, in their mind, the job is still open. And as well as you may think you've done, it may not be well enough for them to bring you on board. Let me just do one last check and see if anyone else has a question for me. And the answer seems to be no. So let's close out by saying I'm Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter. I'll be back at Friday at 9 a.m. with Career Coach office hours. If you've got a question for me, you can email it to me at thebiggamehunter@gmail.com. Put the phrase office hours in the subject line. I've also got a great website at thebiggamehunter.us. Emily, I'll come back to you in a second. Thebiggamehunter.us with a lot in the blog that can help you. You can also schedule time for a free discovery call or schedule time for coaching. Emily, last minute, under the wire, asks, have you heard of candidates getting scammed by a recruitment agency? So the question comes down to what form of scam. If you're asked for money, the answer is that's a scam, because almost every employment agency in the United States is a employer paid fee. So why are they asking you for money? If they're looking for the last four digits of your social security number, that's not a scam because they need all the others. But you need to understand that sometimes employers ask them for that as part of their completing an application form on your behalf. Yep, last four digits of the social. That's not a scam. That's because an employer wants to differentiate between all the Emily Joneses that might be in their applicant tracking system, or all the Ramesh Patels, or all the Wen Chus in their system. And the last four digits of the social security number become the differentiator between one Emily, Wen, Ramesh. So don't worry about that one. If they ask you for the entire social security number, hang up the phone, get off the line. That one's a scam because they don't need the full social, just the last four. I know when I did recruiting and that started as a practice, I asked about it because I was concerned about identity theft for people I was representing. And thus, it was explained to me, it was designed to separate all the people with identical names who might have worked at, I'll use one company as an example that's fairly large, JP Morgan Chase. Often there's more than one person who's been employed there with the same name. So how do they differentiate last four digits of social? Hopefully that answered your question and allayed any concerns you have. If anyone else has a question while I'm doing this wrap up, I'll try and sneak you in. But the long and the short of it is, don't sweat that one. If you're interested in my coaching you can schedule time for a free discovery call or schedule time for coaching at my website, which is thebiggamehunter.us. I'd love to help you. Also, I've got a great video course called The Ultimate Job Interview Framework, and I have a number of other courses you can find out about on my website. If this isn't your time to go to the site, just put the address in your phone. Again, that's thebiggamehunter.us and my name, Jeff Altman. This way you can get back to me at a later point. Lastly, if we're not connected on LinkedIn, send the connection request to me at linkedin.com/in/thebiggamehunter. Have a terrific day, and most importantly, be great. Take care.